The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup, it overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. So this psalm, it's almost like a meditation for some of us. Maybe when you just heard it, you were taken to a specific memory where you heard the psalm in a memorable moment. One of the most familiar pieces of scripture that we know, many of us can even recite the words without a Bible. The benefit is that, that we know this, and certain things are brought to mind because of specific meanings to each of us. The downfall is that, we know this, and it can be hard to hear new things with what God is sharing with us this morning. So I'd like to invite us to hear the words from the psalmist again. And this time, I invite you to be open. Be open to something new, something that sticks out to you that God might be sharing with you. Be open to a word. Be open to a phrase that sticks out and focus on that. It could be something that you're familiar with, and yet it might be something new. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me, even in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup it overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. Was it the image of the shepherd that stuck out to you this time? The caring image of a protector who leads you out from the pen into the wild. You are led through the rocky places, the dry places, and you are navigated through dangerous terrain. You can't stay in one place because you got to eat. You got to find water. You have to have an opportunity to grow. It is dangerous out there for sure, yet God walks ahead of you. You must leave the comfort of the pen so that you might find the cool, still, peaceful waters that give life. The refreshing, crisp, clean sensation that you feel with each mouthful, rejuvenating. And it is as if it restores something within you. Maybe your spirit, maybe your faith, maybe your soul or your mind. You're not quite sure, but something about those words resonate. We don't stop at the water, though. Even though the terrain is craggy, riddled with loose rocks that you might trip on, boulders and pits in which one could easily slip, the image of the shepherd knowing the path and calmly guiding us through gives us comfort. It doesn't mean that the path isn't difficult, but if we stick close to the shepherd, we find the path more manageable. The path itself, not always obvious, but sometimes it is. We must be careful to not become too confident in ourselves, following a path and then not our shepherd. As we said before, the path the shepherd leads us down is not always the easy path, and we might even find ourselves in the deepest valley. Here, the air is cold and stale. The sun is blocked by the intimidating peaks, while rocks and boulders occasionally trickle down the mountainside. It is eerily quiet, And so when we hear the fall of a hoof or a paw, we look behind us, fearing the crouched figure of a predator who has snuck up behind us. What little light that makes it down into the valley, it peers into the crags, and glints of light reflect back from unknown eyes watching from the darkness. Yet in the midst of this darkness, I am comforted by the shepherd. It is not their first rodeo. And even though there are some pretty tough times or pretty tough things out there like wolves and bears, well, my shepherd has used that rod before and will do so in order to protect the flock from predators. Maybe you resonated with the imagery of the table that the psalmist describes. The table is set. You might see the familiar table that you have at your home. You might see a picnic of some sort on a blanket. Or since we're in the middle of the shepherd imagery out in the middle of nowhere, you might see a large banquet table where fruits and breads and roasted meat and an abundance of other things are resting out there in the open. You sit at the table and you are marked as one of God's very own. You are selected, you are claimed, you are valued, you are prepared for, and you are loved, all in the simple act of anointing. The table which you have sat at has a cup in front of you. Well, of course you need something to drink with this wonderful spread of food here. And so a jar of wine is brought and is poured into the cup, and it's filled to the very brim. It is so high that you can actually see the surface tension, rounding out the edges of the wine to keep it from spilling onto the elaborate table. In this moment, you can't help but feel the goodness and the mercy that surrounds you. You've seen it in the shepherd. You've seen it in the elaborate table set before your very eyes, and now you feel it within the security and in the comfort in the house of the Lord. Here you are valued, your needs acknowledged, and you know that you are always welcomed home. Here you will dwell the rest of your days. There's something just about this psalm that makes you feel good. It's easy to forget that it's slap in the middle of a whole hodgepodge of emotions, thinking about the other psalms. They are reaching to the deepest places within ourselves, giving us space to share our anger, to share our fear, to share our frustration, maybe a sense of betrayal, and at the same time, it makes room for a space of hope. It is crucial to remember that this psalm is believed to have been written during a time of defeat, where the Israelites are scattered far and wide. Some are taken captive, others are grieving the loss of their loved ones, and some are left destitute with their homes, farms, and animals burned to the ground. Yet there is a place, a time for this psalm, which is an expression of the hope in God, even in this uncertain time. That certainly frames the text itself, and I'd like to read for you just a bit of Psalm 22, right before this very comforting psalm. And you might even recognize some of the famous words which escape Jesus' lips in a time of despair. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me? From the words of my groaning, oh my God, I cry by day, but you don't answer, and by night, and I don't find any rest. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our ancestors trusted. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not human, scorned by others and despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They make mouths at me, they shake their heads. Commit your cause to the Lord. Let him deliver. Let him rescue the one in whom he delights. Yet it was you who took me from the womb. You kept me safe on my mother's breast. On you I was cast from my birth, and since my mother bore me, you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble, it's near, and there is nobody to help. Many bulls encircle me. Strong bulls of Bashan surround me. They open wide their mouths at me like a raving and roaring lion. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within my breast. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to my jaws. You lay me in the dust of death. To him indeed shall all who sleep in the earth bow down. Before him shall bow all who go down to the dust, and I shall live for him. Posterity will serve him. Future generations will be told about the Lord and proclaim his deliverance to a people yet unborn, saying that he has done it. So I share part of, it's a really long psalm, so that's only part of it. But I share this to sort of give us a framework that I don't think that the psalmist is intending for us to think that this is all fairy tale, that's all just gravy, as some of us might consider. But rather it's a very complicated relationship with God. And so with that in mind, with many of these other psalms which give us a voice for a lot of the feelings and emotions that we feel within us, I think it's helpful to look at the 23rd Psalm with those surrounding it and kind of holding it up. And so we have to do a bit of exegesis, or studying of the text. And here, as the words that we use can make a huge difference, there are two pieces in the 23rd Psalm that I'd like for us to look at. When the psalm uses the word paths, we might think of maybe like a lightly trodden hiking trail. But the Hebrew word is used to describe the ruts within the road from carts drawn by horses. So it's kind of a different thing. And so have you ever been, what came to my mind, maybe more contemporary, is have you ever been to the Goo car wash? They signal you to pull up and they direct your car right onto the track, and then you're just done. And it guides your car through the car wash. Well, that's kind of the image that the psalmist paints for us, that we're kind of being guided down a well-traveled path that God and others have worn in the tracks. And I like this image because it helps to remind us of the journey that we're on. This brings us to the other word that I'd like for us to look at. The phrase towards the end that's translated as, I will dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long, can also be translated as, and some argue more accurately translated as, I will continually return to Yahweh's presence my whole life long. And thus we reinforce the idea of a relationship with God as a journey and as an effort on our part as much as on God's. It takes work to follow God, and it's not just thinking good thoughts, but it's about how do you navigate through life. The tendency that we have with this beautiful psalm is to just make it about God taking care of everything, or even writing it off as an allusion to the afterlife. What we see when we take the time to hear the words again for the first time is the promise of a divine presence to give us hope and courage. As the shepherd shares with us, the path is not easy. The way is not free of trials, as some would have you believe. God does not promise prosperity because you are simply a good, faithful follower. However, God does promise to be with you in that deep, dark valley. God does promise that you will at times be led to cool, refreshing water that quenches your thirst. And God does promise that you are loved, that you are valued, and that you are welcomed into the beloved community where we travel together, and we are invited to keep returning. Amen.